All right, so good morning and welcome to our skill sharing conversation on managing and motivating volunteers. Thank you for being here. I am Darby Malvey, Programming and Outreach Coordinator here at LibraryLinkNJ, and I am thrilled that you're all here today to join us and our moderator, Rachel Talbert from Bernard's Township Library, who's going to help lead our discussion. Just an FYI, this session is being recorded, but I am going to keep an eye on the time. And when we have about 10 or 15 minutes left, we will end the recording early. That way, if there are any other, topics or things you want to bring up or questions you want to ask that might be a little bit more sensitive that you don't want to see up on the YouTube, we can talk about those at the end. So fear not everything will be recorded. I also want to apologize. I am not on my usual computer today. So if I'm a little bit laggy, that's the danger of hybrid work. Sometimes you leave the house without your laptop. So I apologize. I hope you all can hear me and see me okay. We're going to jump right in, I think, with introductions, and then Rachel will get us started with some, discussion prompts that she's come up with. So I've introduced myself. Rachel, do you want to go first or do you want to go last?
I can go first. That's
okay.
Fine. Cool. I'm Rachel. I'm the Teen Services Librarian at the Bernard's Township Library. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And as part of my teen services, I'm the volunteer coordinator. So I do all things with all different kinds of volunteers.
You want to just call on someone, I guess, the next person?
Joyce, would you like to go next?
Okay, unmuted, that's better. Okay, hi, I'm Joyce, Joyce Huang. I'm the Special Populations Librarian at Plainsboro Library and also the Teen Volunteer Coordinator. I am only in charge of the teen volunteers at our library. Someone else is in charge of the adult volunteers. For the teens, we do programming, shelving, shelf reading, pretty much anything that we think that they can handle. And that's it for me. Do I call on someone or Darlene?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Darlene Swistock. I work in the Buckles office, Executive Assistant and Member Services Coordinator.
All right, and Darlene, who do you want to call on?
All right, how about we go to Stephanie?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Stephanie Sandala. I am Programming and Outreach Specialist here at LibraryLink New Jersey, and I'm happy to be here and learn more about motivating volunteers. I don't, manage any volunteers specifically, but I'm always looking for feedback on how we can better motivate and lead people regardless. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. Okay, and I call on Mary Jean. This hair looks amazing, so.
Oh, thanks. My name is Mary Jean. I am one of the teen librarians for the Hunterdon County Library System. And myself and another teen librarian, we coordinate all of the teen volunteers. So that's like volunteering, like shelving and stuff, but we also have a tab group as well. I will call on Kelly.
Hey folks, sorry, I'm on the desk out in the world today, so trying to manage a few things. My name is Kaylee. I'm the youth services librarian at Collingswood Public Library, specifically mostly with teens. I also manage our volunteer program. Actually started our volunteer program this past year, and it's still working out some of the kinks. So very excited to hear what y'all have to share. Thanks. I'm not sure who's gone yet.
How about Melissa? If you're available, Melissa.
Melissa's here with me.
Oh, well then.
And I don't know if she has access to a microphone or not.
Okay. So Melissa also works in Collingswood. Good to know. Oh, there's Melissa. She says, hi, everyone. My name is Melissa, and I am the children's librarian at the Collingswood Library. I am interested in learning more about working with volunteers. All right. How about Jill? Are you
Yes, I'm here. My name's Jill Butcher. I'm the Assistant Director for the Warren County Library.
Cool. And I think Liradonna.
Hi, everyone. I'm on my work computer, so my camera's acting a little weird today. My name is Liradonna, and I am an ESL library assistant. And I look forward to hearing what everyone has to share today. Thank you.
Thanks. And then I guess, sorry, I don't know who's on their maybe Circ account. Is that Franklin Lakes, I'm guessing?
That's Fort Lee. Good
Oh,
morning,
Fort Lee.
everyone. Similar like Liradonna, we're at the same library. Hi, Leary. Hi, everyone. I'm having issues with my video, but my name is Jeanette Shelley. I work at the Fort Lee Public Library. I'm head of circulation here, and I also do manage our adult volunteers. I do both Adopt-A-Shelf and Books on Wheels. And yes, I'm very interested in how to retain volunteers, manage, and recruit. So I'm very interested in this webinar today. Thank you.
Great. So if you've never attended one of our skill sharing conversations, the way it works is it is not a formal presentation. It is an informal conversation format. So we're going to talk, we're going to chat, we're going to share ideas, we're going to ask each other questions, and we are going to learn from each other, which is a really nice way of doing things, I think. But Rachel is going to be our fearless leader for the conversation and kind of keep us on task and get us going. So Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. I just want to start off by saying that this is the first time I'm moderating anything like this, so please bear with me for be a little patient with me. Thank you. But I know a lot of you have already said this in your introductions, but I was wondering what different tasks that you have for your volunteers to do. A couple of you have mentioned shelving. At our library, we have team volunteers who help with shelving. They help with shelf reading, emptying the book drop, planning programs through tab. So I was just wondering what kind of, so we can kind of all get on the same page, what are the different tasks that your volunteers do?
I can chime in. Probably the biggest thing we have our volunteers do is craft preparation, because there's always some sort of take and make. So that's the main thing. We also recently launched an Adopt-A-Shelf program where the volunteers have like a specific section of shelving that they tend to. And so that's shelf reading, cleaning, checking for condition. And we also do have them help with some cleaning. We're a very small library with limited staff, so we'll have them like clean the toys or the Legos or things like that. In the past, I've also had, this is all teen stuff. I've had teens do book reviews, like read ARCs and give book reviews as volunteering hours, or help with social media posts. I'm sure I'm missing some things, but that's kind of a general rundown.
Really?
We've had volunteers doing a lot of those same tasks, shelving, shelf reading, sanitizing toys, leading some clubs, helping out with programming. But we've kind of run into a little bit of a roadblock that those are also tasks that our paid staff does. So there's been concerns, particularly from the union. And we actually have not reinstated our volunteer program since the pandemic yet.
That's really tough.
Yeah, it's hard. We have people asking us, they want to come back and we'd like to have them back. But we really don't know yet where we stand legally in terms of bringing them back.
We have the same like here where we can't have volunteers do something that someone's paid for. So we have to get like really creative. And so sometimes I'll just word things differently. So we have one paid shelver for adult. So we can have them shelving and youth services, but only youth services. They
Oh.
can't shelve an adult.
Interesting.
And then they're working on an inventory project, which like you can do infinitely because things are always coming in, and that's not something that's in anyone's job description. So they just go around with a laptop with we use Polaris, and they just scan in every single barcode in the whole collection. And like shelf maintenance, we call it, where they like take the books off. You know, it's like a doctor shelf, but it's not in anyone's job description to do it. So we can have them do that. And then for our teens, if we have like a really large event, like a library-wide big family event, they will come and help out with that. So that's what we do here.
Similarly to that, Mary Jean, when I was a high school librarian, another ongoing thing that isn't really in anyone's job description, maybe, I would have the teen volunteers help with pieces of discarding, obviously not discarding things from the actual catalog, but like they love that stamp. You know, or if you have to like cross out barcodes and things like that, that might not, maybe that is in some, depending, I guess, on your union and your job descriptions, but that was one that, you know, we were always have books damaged or have books that have to go. And I would do sort of the technical stuff and then just leave a box for them of things that they could discard when they came in to do volunteer hours.
Recently at the Berners Township Library, we've started doing sustainable shelves through Baker and Taylor. So our volunteers create and maintain, like, sort the donations when they come in and scan them to scan their ISBNs to see if like Baker and Taylor actually wants them. So that's something that would be a really good way to manage donations and volunteers. At least that's what we've been finding. And these are some of the teen things. We also have adults helping out with the interlibrary loan with like unpacking and packing and shipping and doing that stuff. So that might be something, but I don't know. Again, I don't know if there's like a fine line between that and what, you know, is covered under the union, but those are some things that we've had that were stuff like that.
No, good ideas. Thank you.
My perspective is also on a different side. We have library staffers, friends, and trustees who are members of committees, and they do committee work for us. So it's a significant amount of time that these groups commit to coming to meetings and helping with events and everything else. So we've got I'll say some of the public, whether or not they're friends or trustees, helping in a different way than the hands-on at the individual libraries. And we do have a number of staffers that support committee work. So I'm trying to figure out ways to acknowledge their efforts.
Go ahead.
So I was going to just ask Darlene a follow-up question. What kind of committees do they have, just to kind of get some ideas?
We have a friends committee, trustee, youth services, adult services, policies and procedures, bylaws. I think probably the other consortia have similar setups to help run certain areas of the organization. We have a member services, library administration that supports directors, election committee when it comes up.
Just to clarify, Darlene, these committees are made up of members of the public and paid staff?
Well, most of them are primarily staff members, whether or not it's directors or staff, but we do have some enthusiastic friends and trustees that are on the friends committee or the trustee committee. We have some former trustees on our scholarship committee, in addition to the paid staff members. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Joyce, I think you were going to say something, but I cut you off before. I'm so sorry.
No, just one other service that I haven't heard mentioned yet that we used to have that was very popular with both the volunteers and the patrons was we have the teens do a Geek Desk. So basically just a technical help desk. generally just helping elderly patrons with their phones or their tablets or simple computer printer things. So it didn't require a very high level of technical know-how. But yeah, that worked out very well. The only problem with that is that you have to know the volunteers ahead of time. You have to know that this is someone who is reliable and can deal with people patiently. So we've actually, that is on pause right now since we didn't have volunteers over COVID, and I don't know the current batch well enough, but we'll probably start it up again in a year or so.
Joyce, did you run into any issues with that in terms of like, because I know even paid staff sometimes feel
Yes.
like, oh, I don't want to touch your phone or mess up your tablet, or like, were there any problems with having the volunteers sort of utilizing other people's devices?
Only once, and the patrons were very, I guess we got lucky. They were very understanding, and I was able to help them fix it afterwards. So it was fine. We also did have one circumstance where a patron was upset with his volunteer, just as, you know, it happens, like you said, even with paid staff. But it, again, I was able to help him with his issue, and that kind of resolved it. So I can see how there would be liability involved in some cases. We haven't actually run into any unsolvable problems yet.
Yeah, I was just curious because I know even a lot of reference desks, they have kind of the same issue. Like, oh, if I, you know, if I
Right.
grab your laptop and help you fix X and then it dies,
Right.
like, is that on me? But that's an awesome service. I love that idea.
Yeah,
We
people
have some-
have been asking about it, so I think it was well liked.
We have something similar here at Bernards Township. We call them tech teens, and they are here through like after school, sometimes during the weekend, on Saturdays during the weekends. But I've had that same problem too, where they one of the problems I ran into with the tech teams that we have is that the some of the patrons want the tech teams to read off their personal information, like their credit card information, and like, because they can't see their credit cards or something like that. So I always, I have some volunteers who like, I do a training session with the volunteers, which is actually going to lead into my next question, but over the tech teams, and I say, these are the things you should and should not do for the tech teams. And I would be, because you'll be surprised at how many inappropriate questions you get from patrons. We have this one patron here who would specifically only ask the tech team certain questions. And when we'll try to refer them to the reference staff, he'll just walk away or leave the building. Like, it was like really like, and it was things like certain searches, and like his favorite question was about the dark web, and teens shouldn't and don't, but that's a whole nother. But my next question was actually going to be, unless we want to still talk about these kinds of things, I was going to move on to the next question that I had, was how do you train your volunteers, if there's a training for them, or is it kind of like, go ahead and succeed?
I can start. We don't have training for things like programs because it's you know, all over the place. Specific programs might have specific training, but I do twice a year application, interview, and training session for shelvers and shelf readers. Well, it used to be shelvers. I'm not having them shelve anymore because sometimes that causes more problems than it solves. So now it's shelf reading. They have like a 15-minute interview, basically, so I can just make sure that they can make it to the interview when they say that they're coming, and make sure that they know how to alphabetize and arrange things numerically with decimal numbers. And then the training process is about an hour and a half. I go over our policies and how to locate books in the library, and then give them maybe 20 minutes or so to practice shelf reading, like actually do it, and then let me know what questions they have. So it's worked out fairly well. Shelving was much harder because we do have a fairly large library, and there's just no way you can cram all of that information into one training session. I would have 3-hour training sessions and it would still not be enough. So that's one of the reasons why we moved on from shelving for the volunteers.
We have a formal written application that we ask potential volunteers to fill out. And then at each branch, we have a volunteer coordinator. So those applications go to the coordinators who then review them, determine whether or not they want to bring the person in to speak with them. Again, very informal, like a 15-minute interview. And those that are accepted, the volunteer coordinators do a orientation process with them that honestly doesn't last very long and probably needs to cover more information than it has in the past.
We do something similar where there's an application. We're a small independent library, so we have a Google form application, and they are able to select which volunteer role that they're interested in. So we've got like circulation support, the shelving support, organization, craft prep, and all of those things are listed with like what skills you would need to successfully do them, so that when I do the very casual like 15-minute interview, I already kind of have an idea of like where we're going to place them and then where I need to train them. The most extensive training is, as some folks have already mentioned, in the shelving, because that's just like where we have the least room for error. One thing that I've been kind of a challenge I've been running into kind of with the training is there are a lot of, because I'm just working with teens, there are a lot of teens who are very enthusiastic about volunteering, but are struggling with the skills. There's so much of the volunteer work we have here is very, very detail oriented. And they'll say they want to do this thing, and they'll say they're good at this thing, and then when they go to do it, or even after I've trained them, it's not being done correctly, and then we have to go back and redo it. And I have a hard time like saying no to any teenager who wants to show up in the library and help. So I think training helps a lot, but I think even beyond training is like figuring out how to match volunteers with the volunteer positions that work with their skill set and work with just their general disposition, because you could train someone on shelving 15 times, and if it just might not be the thing for them. So I know I'm kind of veering off the main topic, but so I guess I'm, when it's appropriate to springboard, I'm curious to know like how folks are kind of matching volunteers with tasks so that the volunteers can be successful, and that we don't have to kind of go back and fix all of the mistakes that were made, often with enthusiasm and really good intention. So I hope that kind of answers the training part, and then bring something else in.
Kaylee, I can say that in my past life as a youth services librarian, like a long time ago, one thing that we would do is when we had teen volunteers, we would actually have them do each job that was available, like at least once or maybe even twice. So instead of letting them select what they wanted to do, because everybody wanted to do like craft prep or making bulletin boards, but like not everyone was good at it. So we would have them do shelving, and we would have them do shelf reading, and we would have them do craft prep, and we, all the different things, and then say, okay, this is going to be kind of your permanent assignment. And, of course, they could work on other things as needed and whatever. But I think until you actually have them do it and see what the skill is, and, you know, as someone who taught high school for a while, some kids are real confident in their skills and like, that's lovely, but you know, you know, when you're relying on, right? Because when you have volunteers, sometimes it's like, it's almost more work to have the volunteers, even though it's really nice that you have them. So I always would test them out in each spot. I don't know if that's feasible for you, but I found that it worked pretty nicely.
I kind of do the flip of that where, so at the Bernard Township Library, they can they sign up to either volunteer in the children's library, the general library, which is upstairs for adults and teens, and as a tech teen or a teen advisory board member. And every time they, as part of their sign in and sign out sheet, they tell me the tasks that they did as part of their daily tasks. So if they were in children's and they emptied the book drop and they shelved the J series, I'll go back in and check with the staff member to see if the volunteer did it right, and then we can kind of reassess from there. Like, let them try, kind of similar to what Darby was saying, like let them try out the different volunteer tasks, but also double check with the staff, because they'll be honest and tell you, you know, this person only came and did the book drop but didn't do the rest of the task, or they didn't listen when we asked them to do the craft prep, and like, you know, things like that. So it's also good to have the feedback, because obviously the staff needs it done a certain way versus the volunteers who kind of like to make things up as they go along.
I mentioned before that I do have an interview for each person who applies to be a shelver or a shelf reader. And during that interview, I do make them do a shelving exercise so I can make sure that they are capable of organizing books properly. It hasn't happened very often, but occasionally there are teens who just don't have that skill. And generally, I will be honest with them and let them know that there are a lot of other ways that they can volunteer at the library still, including program volunteering, which honestly, I think the volunteers find more fun anyway. And a lot of it is just things like setting up, cleaning up, which almost anyone can do. So there's generally always going to be something that they can do. And it's just a matter of, as you guys mentioned earlier, finding out who goes where.
Along those lines, Joyce, I know sometimes I substitute at the Cherry Hill Public Library, and they even have a little test on their volunteer application. I mean, not that the kids couldn't look it up, I guess, but you know, it'll say like, well, what would you put next, or how would you like, just to get a feel for whether or not they're even familiar with the library, you know, because you get kids who just want their hours, who are like, oh, I'll just go volunteer at the library, right? And not that you don't want them, but if you have an overabundance of applicants, then you can kind of weed them out that way too, which is nice.
Yes, I think it also helps in showing the teens during the application process that this is what you'll be doing, because a lot of people come in with no clear idea. They just think, oh, the library is a nice place to be. There's air conditioning. I love books. They always tell me this. I love books. I love reading. And they don't actually understand what they're signing up for. So having that example in the application form, I think, is like the initial weeding process.
I remember I worked at the New Brunswick Public Library, and we used to get sororities from Rutgers all the time who wanted to come. Can we read books to the kids? And I'm like, we actually already have that covered. We're already paying someone to do that. But you can weed the garden. And they were like, never mind, no thanks. We just thought we'd like read books to cute kids. So you're right. Like they think, oh, it's nice and it'll be cute. But like, I think it was Jill that said, you know, to that point, we do have staff for a lot of these tasks. Right. So that is one that I'll never forget. Every time you could know who they were going to be and what they were going to ask as soon as they walked in the door.
I guess the next question I can bring up is how has COVID changed your volunteer program, and what setbacks have you seen with COVID specifically?
Well, at Warren County, we have not actually reinstated our volunteer program yet. We have people interested. Probably once a week we have someone ask us about it. I think we still have some staff that's hesitant to bring it back in part. Plus, honestly, I think we want to rework the entire program from start to finish. We're looking at, do we actually try to kind of advertise a little bit for specific tasks for the volunteers, trying to find a good match for certain things. Certainly the training part of it, we have to revamp, increase as well. And honestly, I think too, maybe staff monitoring of the program. We're in the same boat where we have been in the past, like many of you, with the shelving, and it's kind of more of a headache than it's worth. But if we reinstate that part of it, we definitely need the staff to monitor it more closely and then probably do some more training.
A couple of things. First of all, I totally understand the staff being hesitant to get volunteers back. We've only started up volunteering again since May, so just two months, less than 2 months. And I've already had a few kids call out because they tested positive. And fortunately, right now they're just shelf reading. So that's not really something where you come into contact with a lot of people, but it's still a possibility. I had a coworker mention working with a teen, and a few days later, that teen told me that he was going to miss his next shift because, hey, he tested positive. So it can happen. It is a concern. At this point, because our library has already gone, we're mask optional, we're doing in-person programming. So it's like, if we're bringing everything else back, then I think volunteering, it is like, you just have to take the risks, since we are taking risks with everything that we do. Let's see, there was another thing. Oh, right. So one of the things that we used to have teams doing shelving, and one thing that I was able to do after COVID was to get rid of that. So as you guys mentioned, having teens shelve, yeah, sometimes it's more work, especially like even if you have staff check up on them, then that's more time that the staff has to be working. So during COVID, because we had no volunteers, staff did get accustomed to shelving on their own. So it did make it easier to say, when we started up again, I'm only going to have the volunteers shelf read. And that's actually worked out great. They've done a great job shelf reading, which means that the shelves are in much better order, and that makes shelving easier as well. So I think that overall, it has had a positive impact, and I haven't had any of the staff members complain that, you know, now they still have to shelve even with volunteers back.
Just to point out what so with us, I think our biggest problem with our volunteers coming back after COVID was the tech teams, and how they'd have to be less than 6 feet apart from the person. So it was one of the last things that we had to come back. Meanwhile, everyone was asking for it. We did require our volunteers, and we still do, well, we try to, even though the library is mask optional, that the volunteers still have to wear their masks, especially with other people. We also kind of encourage them to wear gloves with other people's devices. So just in case, like, I know like there's not really any sign of touching, but it made the patrons feel more comfortable with handling their devices and things like that. So that was our biggest hang up, because the patrons clearly wanted it, but it was like, but it was slow to come back. And now that we have the tech teams, the irony is that we don't have very many patrons looking for their services. It's like everyone disappeared. It's like the weirdest flip. But we're slowly getting them back, and they're doing things. But they've been helping. The tech teams have been helping us with things like creating signage for displays and things that like the staff can do. But it's one of those, give them something else to do. We also recently switched from Cloud Library to Libby, so we have them helping and like learning how to do that. So if a lot of our times the tech teams, instead of their downtime with helping patrons, because people are still wary about that, we're having them do more of the like library side aspect of it. Not that obviously our reference staff can't help and won't help, it's the other additional help so that, you know, when people go and look for those things, the tech teams can still help them and do all of that, especially on Saturdays when we're short staffed. That was one of the things. And I think that another big problem we've been having is letting people, letting us know that they've tested positive. Like, it's one of those things where like, I'm not sure, I've had some volunteers come when I feel like they're sick and they're like, oh yeah, it's just allergies, but then they mysteriously just don't show up the next time. And I'm like, so I'm like, to every page, like, and then getting back in touch with the patrons is a weird aspect to it. But anyway. Was there anything else about this that we wanted to talk about, or should I ask another question? Okay, I'll ask another question. So how do you keep your volunteers engaged with the more like boring, not exciting tasks? Because I know we've all talked about how a lot of our volunteers do a lot of the shelf reading, and that can be tedious. We also, like at Bernard Township, we have them do like help with PLC and weeding, but those are like mundane tasks. So I didn't know if there's a way you try to keep them engaged while they do those less fun tasks.
Can I add to your question too, Rachel?
Sure, of course.
Because I'm curious, you know, I'm working at LibraryLink, so I don't have volunteers in the kind of traditional, in the library sense, but we do work obviously with all of you and get volunteers from, you know, library staff for, hey, do you want to contribute to our newsletter? Or do you want to host a skill sharing conversation, Rachel, or all these different kinds of things, right? Mentor NJ and stuff like that. And I'm curious how, if, especially those of you who maybe work with adult volunteers, like, how do you, in addition to, as Rachel said, motivating, but also recognizing, like, what does anybody do to kind of recognize and thank the folks who are putting in the time? I've always worked with teens before this, so it was, you know, they love a sticker, but with adults, it's a whole new world for me. I would love any insight.
We used to do a volunteer tea every year for both the adult and teen volunteers, although I think they were separate events. Yeah, aside from that, I can't think of anything. And we have had a bigger issue retaining adult volunteers because, you know, they say that they have time and then a few weeks later they don't.
During National Volunteer Week in April, each year we would hold a volunteer recognition event. Sometimes it would be a luncheon or a dinner. We've done like ice cream parties. Oops. Sorry about that. We would give them little gifts. I think one year maybe we gave them plants that were popular. One year I put together all sorts of like mint candies in a little bag, and I don't quite remember what I wrote on it, but it was like, thanks for your involvement, your commitment, that kind of thing. Around the holidays, I always try to send handwritten notes to people, the volunteers. If we know there's been an occasion in their life, birthday, anniversary, maybe unfortunately a passing of a family member, again, we try to send some sort of card, written note to them. Just trying to stay connected and let them know that we really do appreciate the efforts they put in.
I really like that handwritten note idea, Jill, even if it's just a thank you note for taking the time. That's,
I do that.
Writing that down.
Yeah, I do that with staff sometimes too, and it's amazing how much it's appreciated. It's interesting to me. They'll sometimes send me back like a written thank you letter or something, but I find just a little note goes a long way.
That's a great idea. And thank you too. I didn't know that National Volunteer Week was a
It's
thing.
almost always, I think, like the week before or after Library Week in April.
Oh, okay. I Googled it and I'm going to include it with the links that Rachel and Kaylee shared when I send out the follow-up email. So in case anybody wants to see the website, thank you. That's good to know too.
We've also, just popped into my head, we haven't done it obviously in a few years, would make posters for National Volunteer Week with pictures of the volunteers and again, like a big thank you kind of thing. So people walking into the libraries would just see that, and people love visuals.
Fantastic idea. Thank you.
So I think our situation's a little bit different again with the people who volunteer for the committees. But one of the things that we tried this year is we often host educational webinars based on topics that are appropriate for trustees or friends or directors or staff. This year, we also offered parliamentary procedures training, and that was initially the audience would be the chairs of our individual committees. They're not as formal as an executive board meeting, but they still have to follow some rules. And we opened the training up to our friends and our trustees, thinking that that might be helpful for them to use at their board meetings or other boards that they participate on. And we are also offering introductory Google training of the different applications to our membership. So we're having a session on docs, slides, forms, and we extended an invitation again to our friends and trustees and said that it's not required for you to attend to still support the library, but this is an opportunity for you to pick up some information, just like if you took the class at the library or an adult education. So we thought that it's just something that it would be a value add to you. There's no requirement for the library. It's just something to help you pick up additional information.
And when you offer those things, do you find that they're well attended, that people are excited about them?
They have been appreciative. I find that a lot of times people sign up, no matter what it is, they'll sign up for an online event and then something comes up. They had an emergency at home, or the desk was short or something. So we do get a number of people, but I think we have more no-shows for online events than we did for in-person events.
There are 23 people registered for this conversation, so
Okay. Okay.
we know how you feel.
Okay, that's good to good to know, because we're like, what are we doing wrong here?
No, I will tell you, I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but I will tell you, obviously we do tons of webinars and stuff, and we find that typically we anticipate half of the people who register will actually show up, which almost always turns out to be about right. Partly that's, I think, because we record things, and so folks know that they can go back and watch the recording later. But no, I don't think you're doing anything wrong. I think it's very easy when something's virtual to just say, maybe I'll be there, maybe I won't. You don't feel that same sense of like they're expecting me.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
At this point, should I end the recording? And we still have about 15 minutes left to chat if there's anything,
That sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. So if you are watching this on YouTube, then sorry, you should have been here. But thank you for watching, and keep an eye out for the next skill sharing conversation.